I'm so excited to say that today we've got Valerie Wong, who's a Pinterest strategist, on the podcast to talk to us about how to use Pinterest for business.
Hi, my name's Dee, and through the beauty of our dreams, we are going to navigate the journey from employee to self-employed to business owner extraordinaire, empowering you to find balance in your life, fund your lifestyle with your passion, and ultimately have more time with your loved ones. Each episode will give you actionable tips on how to deal with the issue covered. I'm so happy you're joining us.
So tell me, Valerie, how you got around to being self-employed and working in the field that you do.
Well, I'd known for years that I was not meant to work for somebody else, but I just couldn't
hear you.
figure out how to make that happen. So, for years I stayed in jobs that I just, I didn't like. They didn't play to my strengths. They literally, some of them played to my weaknesses.
Oh no.
So, I went through several years of just being miserable and trying different things and trying to figure out, how to have my own business and work for myself. And it's funny because just recently I've started learning more about numerology and learned that I am a life path 1. And for people who are life path 1, one of the things about that number is you're meant to be an entrepreneur. Like, you are not meant to work for somebody else. So when I found that out, I was like, that just makes so much sense. And it all kind of clicked at that point. But anyway, so, I
had 6.
Oh, are you really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but
that's so fun to explore, to learn more
right?
about your number and yourself. So after the podcast, of course, I'm going to go look yours up and learn more about you.
Thank you.
But yeah, so even though they were, quote unquote, good jobs and they paid well, I was just so unfulfilled and so unhappy. So the way it came about is about 2 years ago, we were living in Dallas, Texas, myself and my husband and our 2 cats. He accepted a job in Orlando, Florida, and he moved a few months ahead of me. So I had to stay behind until our lease was finished up and wrap up some things there. And so I wasn't able to transfer in my job, which I was not shedding any tears over, I can tell you that. I also, the thought of, going through another job search and looking for another job that I knew I wouldn't like and wouldn't want to be in was just so miserable. It's just such a miserable
destroying, right?
Yes, exactly. So I thought, okay, I am going to start working on something now so that when I get there, I'll be ready to go with my own venture. And I had a blog for years that was really just because I'm also a wellness coach. And so I did a little bit of that on the side, but I'd had a blog for years about wellness, and I learned a lot about Pinterest from my own blog and just, taking courses and learning about it. And that turned out to be something that I was able to market myself in. And I got my first couple of clients. And from there, it just grew mostly through word of mouth with the clients I was working with. And by the time I got Florida, I was able to, we were like, let's just go for it. So I didn't look for another job. I started that business. I haven't looked back, and it's been amazing.
There's 2 things there that I see time and time again with the people I work with, that sometimes you need a catalyst to finally take that plunge, right? And sometimes it's not always at first glance a positive, it might be a change in your circumstances or a health issue, or, some people are made redundant, but there's always tends to be this catalyst, or a big birthday, for example, is another one I hear a lot, where people decide, right, now is the time I need to do this. And the other thing is that you have managed to think about what you're good at, not necessarily what jobs have you had in the past, but what specific skills have you managed to become really good at, better than most people, so that you can start selling that service to other people, which just shows, really good thinking outside of the box, right? You haven't just thought, oh, I used to be I don't know what your previous jobs were actually, but
Well, one of them was fundraiser, which
My previous jobs too.
right. So
But you haven't just thought, right, I was a fundraiser, so I must be a self-employed fundraising consultant. You've really thought about what skills you've got, which is fantastic, isn't it?
well, thank you. I actually had never thought about that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate it. And I
So,
totally agree with you about the catalyst. It's especially for somebody like me who's pretty risk averse, going
yeah.
out on your own. Now, granted, I was fortunate to be in a situation where I have a partner who has an income, so it wasn't as scary for me as somebody who's completely on their own. But even then, being so risk averse, it was still kind of a scary scenario. And so I think what happens is when you're meant to do something, like I know I was meant to work for myself and not for someone else. When that happens and it's what's meant to be and you don't take action on it, eventually the universe is, I believe, is going to start nudging you in that direction. And I think it's going to give you really kind of gentle nudges at first, like giving you the idea, and then maybe it'll make you a little uncomfortable in your current situation if you don't go with that first little nudge. And then eventually, if you just keep ignoring it and not taking action on it, the universe is just going to make it so that you really don't have a choice. Like you just have to do what you're meant to do.
Yeah, and I think once everything kind of falls into place and you get that alignment, it's just time to make that decision, right?
I agree.
So tell me about Pinterest. Now, I know a lot of people are very familiar with Pinterest, and we all use it to sort of look at, paints that we like and the reading nook that we'd love to have in our house and stuff like that. But a lot of us are still sort of confused. I'm less confused because obviously I have you in my life, but a lot of people are very confused about how to use it for their business, especially if maybe they're a service and so they don't really know what pretty pictures they post. So tell me a little bit, why should people consider using Pinterest in their business?
Yeah, and that's so true. Most people do think about Pinterest in that way naturally because that's how they tend to use it. But Pinterest is actually a very powerful platform for bloggers, for businesses. And a few of the reasons, just to give a little background and some stats about Pinterest, there are about 175 million active Pinterest members just in the US. And that doesn't include all the other countries where Pinterest also has a big presence. So that's just a US statistic.
Yeah.
These days, when Pinterest first started, probably 100% of users were female. But over time, there are more males coming into the Pinterest platform. So now it's about, at least here in the US, it's about 81% female and 19% male. And, about 2 million of those people just here in the US save content to a shopping board on a daily basis.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a place where people go to shop, they go to look for what they're go to find what they're looking for. It's still lumped in with social media, and it is like the fourth most popular social media platform here in the US. It's ahead of Twitter and LinkedIn and WhatsApp. And about 28% of people here, or adults here in the US, have a Pinterest account. So that's like, more than 1 in every 4 people.
Yeah, that's a lot. That is
yeah. And millennials especially are really into Pinterest right now. So if that is a target market for you, then that's a great place for you to find clients and get your content out there. And even just in the past year, like Pinterest is continuing to grow. It just recently went public. And so it's growing. I mean, just over last year, it's increased 28% every month. And right now, worldwide, not just in the US, there are 322 million monthly active users. So just think about like 322 million people. That's a lot of people on Pinterest.
That is a lot of people to target.
Yeah.
I think the confusion with Pinterest as for your business is, you just said it's a social media platform, but it's different, isn't it, to the other ones in that the content is kind of evergreen on there. Well, it is evergreen as opposed to, I think, like a Twitter post the life of a Twitter post is between 1 and 5 minutes or something, and
Yeah.
whereas what you post on Pinterest is there for good, isn't it? If someone searches for something that, and my content comes up, I could have posted that 5 minutes ago or like 5 years ago, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, it's still kind of categorized as social media, but it's so much more than that. In reality, Pinterest is more of a search engine. It's like a visual search engine, sort of like a visual Google, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Pinterest actually refers to itself now as a search and discovery engine. And how they explain that, the discovery part, of course, we all know what a search engine is. But, people go on Pinterest because they're looking for a recipe for spaghetti sauce or whatever. But while they're on there, they're searching for that and they find a lot of options for that. But then while they're on there, they're like, oh, look at this. There's also a spaghetti casserole. And then, oh, look, here's how to make your own pasta. And, it just kind of goes on from there and kind of takes you down all these different rabbit holes. So unlike Google, where you're like, I want a recipe for spaghetti sauce, and you type in spaghetti sauce, you get a listing, you click on one, you're like, okay, that looks good, or no, let me try another one. Because of the way Pinterest is set up and it's so visual, you're being exposed to a lot of different things that are related to what you looked for, but not exactly the same. And so it just it lets you discover, which is why they call it discovery, a lot of other things that you're interested in and content that you also want to look at and learn more about.
So how would you use it then if I totally can understand if you're a business that makes pretty things, that you could post on there. You have lots of nice pictures that you can use to post on your Pinterest, and things like, recipes and so forth. But how would you use it, if you are like me, you provide a service, or if you're like you have a blog? I mean, do people really go on there, for example, to look for business management tips, for example?
They actually do. I think you'd be surprised at the amount of content that's on Pinterest and that it is searched for. It's becoming a really good place to promote content like that. There are always, well, maybe I shouldn't say always, but at least right now, there are certain topics and categories that are heads and tails above the rest in terms of the amount of times it's searched for. Like you talked about earlier, food, that's always a big one on Pinterest. It's always going to be one of the top searched items. Decorating. So those are things, but even other things like you talked about, like coaching service or business management, people do go on and search for that type of thing. They look for people. And another thing that happens is maybe they're not actually looking for, let's say, a business coach. Maybe they're just looking for ways to get their business started. And so they're on Pinterest searching for that, because people do look for that kind of stuff on Pinterest. And there's a lot of great content on there about it. But then in the process of doing that, they come across like some of your content and they click through and they're like, oh, this is something I want to read. And they read it and then they're like, oh, and she's actually a coach. Like I could work with her. So Pinterest users kind of go on a journey, I feel like, when they're on Pinterest and clicking through on the different things and seeing the different content. So it really, and if you have a blog, it's also a wonderful way to promote your blog. It is very visual. So even if, you may not want a picture of a woman sitting at a desk typing in every one of your pins, because that might get boring and it may not appeal to people. But, a lot of times people in that niche, for example, will use a photo of a really beautiful, like, desk, like I can't think of what that's called, an overlay, like, just a beautiful desk scene, like you've got your office all set up pretty, and you can use stock photos for that. It doesn't have to be your own.
Unsplash is amazing for that, isn't it? Unsplash.com. Free
Absolutely.
photos, free gorgeous stock photos to use.
That is a great resource. I use it all the time for myself and my clients. Another good one is Pixabay.com.
Okay.
Pixabay.com. That one is sort of an aggregate. So it pulls in free stock photos from a variety of different sites, including Unsplash. So that's another place to just look for a very wide variety of images. And if you're somebody who doesn't have, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Maybe you're a plumber. I don't know. We'll just go with that. Probably not the best example, but you're a plumber. Okay, so there's not going to be a lot of visually appealing images, as far as I know, that you can share as a plumber. Mm-hmm. But you could still be on there because you could just do a pin that doesn't have an image. Like you could do a really nice colorful pin that just has text on it, like a text overlay, that's still really visual appealing and catches people's eye because, the colors and the way you've done your font. So don't feel like you're limited by images. If you just don't feel like your business lends itself to that, there's still other options. And one good example of somebody who tends to do just a pin design that has only the color and text without images is Elle and Company, ELLE. She's a website designer, but you can look at some of her pins on Pinterest. Her name is Lauren Hooker, so you could look her up as Lauren Hooker or Elle and Company. And that's just one example I can think of right off the top of my head of somebody who does that really well, of designing pins that for the most part don't have images.
Yeah, because quotes and phrases and stuff, they work really well. We've all got our inspirational quotes board, haven't we, on Pinterest?
Right.
So, yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
one thing I wanted to go back to really quick, because you talked about, kind of the longevity content on Pinterest. And that is a really important point that you brought up, because unlike Facebook and Instagram, you might get more immediate results in terms of interaction on those platforms. You definitely do. But it's very fleeting. You get it for a few minutes, and then something that you posted yesterday might as well be 100 years old. Like after a few days, nobody's really going to pay attention to it again. And one stat that I can tell you is that, like, on Facebook, so the half-life of a Pinterest pin is 1,600 times longer than a Facebook post.
That's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Last season, I did an interview with Jane Harrell from Cause Digital Marketing, and she does a lot on social media. And she told me such an interesting fact. She said that when Pinterest first started getting big, I think about 5 years ago, loads of businesses sort of pumped in a lot of money into sort of developing their Pinterest pages and so forth. And then it soon tapered off because they didn't see any kind of immediate results in the same way as they did from Facebook, Instagram later on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But then several years later, all of a sudden, they're seeing that a lot of traffic is being directed to their websites and so forth from those Pinterest posts that they made all those years ago.
Yeah.
So they're now getting re-interested in Pinterest because they see the importance of it long-term in social media terms, if you know what I mean.
Right, exactly.
So it's just really interesting, isn't it? So it's almost worth thinking of it as a totally different category to Facebook and Pinterest and so forth.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
So can you do me a favor and tell me, what are the differences between having a personal and a business Pinterest account? Because for me, again, it was a little bit confusing. Like with LinkedIn, should you be posting on your personal page or should you set up a company page on LinkedIn, So what would the differences be, and what do you recommend a small business owner to do?
Absolutely. Business owners, bloggers, anybody who's on Pinterest with the intention and goal of promoting your business needs to have a business account. And luckily, it's free. You don't have to pay to have a business account. It's relatively easy to set it up and get it started. The main difference is there aren't any differences in how it works. Like the way you pin on your personal page is going to be exactly the same way you pin on your business account.
So you get boards and
exactly. But with the business account, you get a few things that you don't get with a personal account. For one thing, you're able to have a link to your website on your profile.
Nice, amazing, yeah.
So that's really important. Another thing you get is access to analytics through Pinterest. They have their own analytics that helps you determine how your content is performing, The most important metric that you'll find in their analytics section is the number of website clicks, or the number of clicks back to your website.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at how different pins are performing. So that's really important. And that's something that you get with a business account. And then the other thing would be you're able to have rich pins, which rich pins are like the great mystery of the Pinterest universe.
Can you demystify it for us, please?
I will do my best. So basically all it is, rich pins kind of help, they make your pin, the pins that you create for your content, or your blog post, your product, whatever, they make it look more professional. So as opposed to looking like somebody or something that your mom pinned, or I mean, your mom might be on there promoting herself, but like somebody's grandma pinned. Instead, it makes it more professional. Now the problem and where it gets confusing sometimes I'll ask my clients when they ask me to go in and optimize their account, do you have rich pins set up? And they're of course like, I don't know if I have rich pins set up. And sometimes it's hard to tell because Pinterest experiments with different ways that they make the rich pins look. So they might look one way on one account and a little bit different on another account. So sometimes it's hard to tell, but they do add some extra details that just a regular pin doesn't get. Like it'll have a nice title on there. It has some extra information. Another nice thing is that it will, anytime you update information on your website, it'll update the information in the rich pin. An example of it. Yeah. So probably the easiest way to understand this would be, I work with a lot of food bloggers, so I love food, so I go back to food a lot for my examples. But there are 3 different types of rich pins. I should probably tell you that. There's a product pin, for people who are a product-based company. Article, that's going to be great for bloggers. And then recipe. So if you have a recipe on your rich pin, it's going to automatically pull like the list of ingredients from your recipe post and put it on, not the pin design itself, but when somebody clicks on the pin to look at it more closely and see more information, you've probably seen this yourself. Like, you'll see a list of ingredients. It doesn't give you the whole recipe, but it shows what the ingredients are, so you kind of know a little bit more about the recipe. So if that food blogger updates the ingredients on their post, it'll automatically update it in the rich pin.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, and like the price on a product, like if you have a product rich pin and you put one price in it and then you change the price on your website, it'll automatically update that on the pin.
Because if it was a Facebook post, you wouldn't really have to bother really going back and changing it, because it would be dead to the world in 5 minutes. So you would just make a new post, I suppose, if anything changed like that. Whereas because Pinterest, the posts have such a long life, that's super handy, isn't it?
Exactly. You're exactly right about that. And that really is one of the big benefits of Pinterest. So to talk about something related to that really quickly. So you do get more of the instantaneous or instant gratification with things like Facebook and Instagram. With Pinterest, it's kind of a long game strategy. It's just like what you said with those businesses who invested a lot of time into it and they weren't seeing any return on investment, so they stopped. And now 5 years later, they're seeing a lot of return. It doesn't take 5 years, but
No.
but it will take, I usually tell people 3 to 6 months is the amount of time you'll need to really start getting traction on Pinterest. So, that's the drawback, is it does take longer to kind of get that traction and momentum going. But once you do, you keep it up. And then, like you said, that content will live on for years. Like there are things that I've pinned like 2 years ago that I'll look back and be like, wow, that got a lot of clicks this month, just for whatever reason. So it really is a long-term strategy. Another thing I'll say is it's a little bit like the stock market. So
that's exactly how I think of Pinterest.
Partly because, it's a slow return on your investment. Most of the time when you are investing money, like in your mutual fund every month or whatever, you don't see a huge jump, on your investment. But you'll see that trend over time. And the other thing is, just like with the stock market, numbers will go up and down. You know, if you look at your stock, at your mutual fund or your IRA over the course of a year, you're going to see lots of little peaks and valleys where they go up and down. But ultimately, it's trending up. Like, it's always trending up. And Pinterest is a lot like that, partly because some content is seasonal. So you might have a month where you have seasonal content that's very relevant. So people are going to be all about it. And so you're going to have a really great month that month. And then a couple of months later, for that particular content, it might level off and actually drop down quite a bit because it's not as relevant. The summer months tend to be a time when a lot of people see a big drop in their numbers because people just aren't on Pinterest as much. They're out on vacation and outside at the pool and having fun.
Because there's actual daylight and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. So I just want people to know, don't be discouraged if you see like one month you had these great numbers and you're like, yes. And then the next month you have a big drop and you're like, oh no, what did I do? You probably didn't do anything. Just write it out, see how it does the next month and the month after that. And I can almost guarantee you, if you're being consistent and following good practices, it's going to go back up.
So you say be consistent. What do you mean by that? Like, what would be a good, once you've set up a really nice Facebook page, which is obviously something that you can help people with. And by the way, I'm going to put all of Valerie's contact details in the show notes. So feel free to contact her if you want her to help a little bit with your Pinterest. But say I've got Pinterest set up all nicely. What do you mean by consistent? What should I be doing thereafter?
Gotcha. Yeah. So once you have your Pinterest profile set up and optimized and, optimized with good relevant keywords so that people can find you in search, you want to be pinning content consistently. Pinterest really favors, creators is what they call them, or business owners who are on Pinterest and consistently adding new content. So you want to be pinning every day. It doesn't have to be all your content. You can pin other people's content too that you think is relevant, but you want to be pinning every day. Ideally, you want to do it at different times throughout the day. Tailwind is a scheduling app. It's what I use, and it's a great resource to help you do that so that you don't have to be logging into Pinterest 10 times a day, to pin something.
And I really like the tribes on Tailwind, where you've got kind of groups of people that you kind of all pledge, don't you, to share each other's content a bit.
Yes, it's kind of like an updated version of group boards. Like, the tribes are, you join these tribes if you're a member of Tailwind, and then you add your content there, people pin it, and then you're also expected to reciprocate. Usually it's a 1-to-1, like for every piece of content you add to the tribe, you pin one from somebody else. Sometimes sometimes people require 2-to-1. So you have to pin 2 pieces of content from someone else for every piece of your content. So make sure you read the guidelines.
So Valerie, I noticed on Pinterest, I'm starting to see more and more hashtags. How do they work? Is it the same as they do on Instagram?
It is kind of. This is something fairly new for Pinterest. I mean, I guess it started kind of in the past year and a half. And it's ironic because for years, Pinterest was like, no hashtags, do not use hashtags, which I thought was great because hashtags I find really annoying. So I always loved that about Pinterest. And then when they started doing hashtags, I was like, dang it.
I'm going to have to learn hashtags now.
That's right. So they are very similar in the sense that, like on Instagram, you can search hashtags. It's the same way with Pinterest. And that's really the purpose of the hashtag on Pinterest. Because again, Pinterest is really a search engine. When you think about using Pinterest to promote your blog or your business, don't think about getting followers. Don't think about, having pretty board covers. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but on your boards, none of that is really necessary. Think about helping people who are just going to come on Pinterest and look for something. Think about helping them find your content, and hashtags do that. Because people can, and different ways that people can use them. They can do a search for a hashtag. They can see a hashtag on a pin and think, oh, I want to look for more more content like that. So they can click on the hashtag and then it'll bring up a feed of pins that have used that hashtag. So if your hashtag was hashtag business coaching or hashtag business tips, then it might very well show up on that feed. It also, with hashtags, the thing that's a little different from just doing a search for a keyword without using a hashtag is that it does bring up the most recent content.
Okay.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, that's really how hashtags work. Now you can have, I believe the current number is you can have up to 20 hashtags on a pin description.
On each post?
On each post.
Yeah, cool.
However, the hashtags count toward your total number of characters in your pin description. So when you're writing a pin description, as of the time that we're recording this, you get 500 characters, which if you're long-winded like me, that is not a lot. So you have to keep it under that 500 characters, and the hashtags count toward that total number.
And I suppose the words that you have in that description are also searchable if people are just looking for searching for words in the sort of traditional way on Pinterest.
Yep.
So it's kind of balancing out what, you know.
Yeah, you're 100% right. So yeah, the keywords that you use just within your description are searchable. The hashtags are searchable. So you can have up to 20. I typically, what I do for my clients and myself and what I recommend to other people is have about 5 or 6.
And I have to say that's one of the services that you provided for me that was most valuable, because hashtags is still something, being in my late 30s, that I'm still struggling to get my head around. And you provided me with a list of hashtags that I could use for based on the kind of content that I share. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm glad it's been helpful. I know what you mean about hashtags, girl. I am right there with you. So
there's just so many things to keep up with. And what is Snapchat? I don't know. And there's now TikTok. I can't keep up.
Oh my God, is there a new one called TikTok?
There's the TikTok now, isn't there?
Oh Lord, I hope not. I don't know.
I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to not get involved with it. I'm not going to engage in it.
Yeah, I never did Snapchat, whatever this TikTok is, not going to do that. I didn't do Periscope, and I've managed without them, so.
All right, let's just stick to Pinterest because it's pretty.
Yes, stick to Pinterest, people.
So imagine I've set up my business, and now I decide to do some Pinterest for my business. I've set up a business account. I've researched hashtags. I've cried a bit about hashtags, but I've got over it and done some more research on hashtags. How many boards would you advise I set up? And what balance do you think it should be between like my own content that I've created and pinning sort of relevant other people's content?
Okay. So what you described means you've gotten off to a good start with all your research and all that. So it's going to vary from one business to another, depending on, what your content is like. I think at least 10 boards is a good number to get started. Eventually, I think you're going to want to have more, but that's a good way to just get you started without being overwhelmed, I think. If you're going to want a board that's just for your content. Like if you're a blogger, you'll put all of your blog posts there. If you have a podcast, you'll pin all of your podcast posts there, episodes there every time you have a new one. So it's one place where somebody can go to people don't go to people's profiles a lot nowadays. It's not like, Instagram and Facebook. They mainly find you through search. Yeah. But if they do start seeing your content come up in search and be like, oh, I think I want to see what else she's got, then they might click on your profile and want to go see it. And it's nice to have one board where they can just go and just see your content and nothing else. And I would put that, you can change the order that your boards are in, and I would put that as your very first board. And one thing about boards, Pinterest kind of gives precedence or kind of favors accounts where it's very clear what that account is about. So that's another reason it's good to keep your personal Pinterest pinning, separate from your business account. Because if you're a business coach like yourself, and you've got, but you're like me, you like food and you like decorating and all these other things.
And cross stitches with swear words. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those are things that if you have boards about those types of content on your business profile or your business account, it confuses Pinterest, because Pinterest is like, and it's not like there's a person at Pinterest at a desk going, let's look at Dee's account and see what all, obviously there's nobody doing that, because there's like millions of accounts. But they have these little bots and things, who knows how they do it. I don't understand all that, but they have these ways of, doing it with technology, to look at an account and be like, okay, this account is all over the place. They're talking about business coaching and they're talking about food and recipes. What in the world are they really about? So when they see that, they're not going to prioritize your content as much, like showing it in people's feeds when they just log in, kind of like Facebook has a feed. You have a feed in Pinterest where you'll just see things that Pinterest thinks you're interested in. And they pull content based on accounts that they think people really like and do a good job with. So I got a little off track, but my point is,
that's really important. So you want to make sure that your business page is basically all stuff related to your products, your services, yourself. Really.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're a brand, you can branch out a little more, because if you're a very business that's like very focused, you just sell, oh my gosh, what pop sockets. Okay, you just sell pop sockets and that's it. How many pop socket boards can you have, right? Like I don't know, maybe you can have a bunch, but
they do have a lot of designs.
That's true. I love pop sockets, but anyway, so yeah, but you could have things that are related to, like closely related to that, to pop sockets. Or, another example is if you're a brand, and so maybe you're like a lifestyle blogger and you have your personal brand, you're blogging about a lot of different topics. So you can have things that are related to your content. So ideally you want to be able to pin your own content to most of the boards that you have on your business profile. So if you've got 10 boards, to make it easy, you want to have those boards with topics that are closely enough related to your content that you could pin one piece of content to a number of those boards.
And it wouldn't look out of place.
Exactly.
So you might, if you were the pop socket company, have a board about phone accessories in general.
Yes, exactly. That's a great example. Thank you. I was struggling with that. But yeah, that's it. Right. So if you're a wellness coach, I work with a lot of wellness coaches and wellness bloggers, and you provide a wellness coaching service, then you could have boards about self-care and about, maybe holistic alternative remedies, different things that are, and maybe you don't personally, maybe you're not an herbalist and you don't make herbal remedies, but it's something that your clientele is interested in and that they'll resonate with. So then you can pin other people's content to those kinds of boards. So you can branch out a little bit, but keep it all where it makes sense together.
But like you say, you can't start having all of your personal hobbies that are unrelated on your business page, because that will confuse Pinterest and you won't appear as much where you want to appear as a business.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say, like, if you're a personal brand and there's something that's just really relevant to your personal brand, like, I don't know, you love coffee, like coffee's kind of your thing, like I am a coffee drinker, and even though maybe you're not creating content about coffee, but you're always talking about your coffee, then maybe you have one board about coffee. or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, you really want to keep it clean in terms of just content that's really relevant to your content and relevant to your ideal like target audience or your ideal market.
So that's key, isn't it? Thinking like with all the other social media platforms, who is my ideal audience? What are they looking for on this platform? And how can I pop up when they're looking for that?
Exactly.
So the one thing that is always interesting, like with all the other platforms as well, you have the opportunity to pay for ads, or in this case, promoted pins. Is that something you think is worth it, or can you get enough traction just from, organic growth on there if you're doing it right?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is, at least as of right now, and has been up to now, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. That's one of the biggest benefits of Pinterest, I think, is that you can use Pinterest for free without doing promoted pins, which like you just explained, or, it's kind of the equivalent of Facebook ads, and still get really great traffic to your website organically. So right now, it's a great way to get free traffic to your website just through organic means, with using good practices in your Pinterest profile, without having to do promoted pins.
That's always nice to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's, I'm guessing, like with Facebook and Instagram, that's something that might change over time, where, but for the moment, it's good to hear that it's a useful platform that doesn't need you to plow in loads of money to get it working for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, at some point it might change. I hope it doesn't, but for right now, you can get so much traffic organically without paying on Pinterest. It's really amazing.
Group boards? What are they? How would you use them for your business?
I am glad you brought that up, because group boards are, back in Pinterest early days, group boards were the bomb. Like, they were the way to get, loads of traffic to your website. And it was a super important strategy that people needed to use. Now, what happened was they started getting kind of spammy, and Pinterest kind of decided, we're not that crazy about group boards. So group boards are still allowed. They're still on there. You can still set them up yourself. You can still join other people's group boards, but they really have kind of lost favor with Pinterest. I have heard that Pinterest is even downranking content that comes from group boards. And
so what is it, just a communal board?
So like, part of it is, how is the quality of the content on that board? Like, if you have a group board and it's very specific, like let's say you have a group board for a group of business coaches and y'all share information there, it's probably not going to be a strike against your account. I don't know how much it'll help your account, but especially if it's like, if you want to, the thing is, Pinterest originally came up with the idea of group boards as a way for people to collaborate and work together. Like, if you had a mastermind group, let's say, and you wanted a place where y'all could, if you found really good information that you thought your other mastermind members would enjoy, you wanted a place to kind of share that content. So you created a group board. And so all of your mastermind members are on that group board. And whenever y'all find something that you're like, oh, this blog post is amazing, or this podcast is amazing, I want the other people in my group to know about it. So you pin it there. That's just one example. But those kind of group boards are great. That's really that was the idea behind group boards when Pinterest came up with them to begin with. And then it sort of
sorry, carry on.
And then it sort of became sort of a free-for-all, where people would set up these group boards and everybody would just pin a bunch of content there, and Pinterest didn't like that. So I still belong to some group boards. I don't really participate in them anymore, and I don't recommend it to my clients, and I don't actively manage group boards for clients anymore. I think Tribes is a much better way to go. Pinterest, Tailwind and Pinterest are partners. So Pinterest is good with that platform and the Tribes. And so I think it really is a better way to go. If you're just using the group board to like get your content out there and promote it and get it in front of new people, Tribes is a much better strategy for that than using group boards.
Well, so that's exciting that there's one thing that if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, you can just ignore completely. So you don't have to worry about group boards at all if you're setting up Pinterest for your business.
That is my recommendation.
That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. And yes, it is so much better now because group boards can be a lot of extra work. So yeah, that's one thing you can just take off your plate. Now, that's really hard for people, especially if they've been on Pinterest for a long time, because it used to be such an important thing. So, another thing, sorry, I don't know how to turn the notifications off on my computer.
Don't worry.
So whenever one comes up, it dings. But like that, sorry. So group boards are extra work that you really don't have to do.
So if someone was listening to this and thinking, this all sounds amazing, I really want to have Pinterest for my business, I think this would be really good, but either they feel like they don't have time, or they're not that familiar themselves with Pinterest, or they're just finding it a bit overwhelming, can you talk us through some of the services that you offer?
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks for the opportunity to do that. So I basically offer two services. One is a setup and optimization service, and it's called on my site with my page, it's called the Pinterest Fresh Start. And so if you don't have a business account, or you have one but you're not really sure what to do with it or how to really get it set up and going, then what I do in that service is I set up your business account. You can also convert a personal account to a business account if you prefer to do that, or you can just open a new one. But anyway, we can decide that, and then I do it for you. So I get the account set up, I get your website claimed on Pinterest. That's probably the hardest part because it requires you have to load a little content into into the back end of your website. So, but I have the steps to walk you through it. So we get that done. I apply for rich pins for you. And then I do the keyword research specific to your content and your business and your brand, so that you have a keyword list to work with. So you already know, okay, these are good keywords that I can use for my content. And then I write your Pinterest profile title and description with those keywords and make sure they're keyword optimized, because those are also searchable. I set up your boards, and based on what I'll do a full review of your website and your blog, so I really get familiar with your content and what you're about, and then I use that information to set up your boards. I optimize those with board titles and board descriptions that are keyword optimized. So basically, I get everything set up. I get Tailwind set up for you if you choose to use it, and get all of that ready to go for you, so that I can just hand over the reins and be like, here's your beautiful Pinterest presence. Go to town. Go do it. Go rule the world with your Pinterest presence. So that's one offering. And then I also offer a monthly management, where for the people who just don't have the time and aren't interested in learning how to do it, which for so many people, it's not the best use of your time to focus on Pinterest when you could be using that time to create content or, get out and promote your products in person or, whatever. So I do offer monthly management. I only have a couple of slots open right now, but it's fluid, so it's always up and down. But I do have one or two slots available for monthly management. And because I'm limited in the amount of monthly management I can do, and also because it is an investment, and a lot of people just, especially if you're new and you're just starting out with your business and you don't have the funds, or the budget to invest in something like that, I've decided to start a new service that I don't even have it on my website yet. It's just now kind of in the beginning stages of being developed, but I'm going to offer like strategy sessions where I can sit down with people. If they already have a Pinterest account, we'll walk through it together, on video, and I'll make suggestions of what they can do to improve it. If they don't have one yet and they need to know how, then I'll walk them through kind of how to do that. I can even do some of the basic stuff for them while we're on the video together. And then if they choose, they can go into a membership program or a membership group where, you pay a little bit each month, and then you have access to me every month, like every day, basically. So once you have your Pinterest account set up and you have questions like, how do I do this? You can just ask me as a member of that group, and I'll be there to kind of help you through it. It'll also be a way, because things are always changing on Pinterest. Like there was a big change that's kind of coming right now. Like it just has gotten started. And it's just like anything else, it's technology, it's digital. So things are always changing. They're always looking for ways to make it better. So something I tell you, one of the reasons I used to do strategy sessions, and one of the reasons I stopped is because you might do one and then a week later some big change happens in Pinterest, and what you told somebody to do is now no longer really relevant. So with the membership group, I'll be making people aware of, okay, this change is coming or it has happened, and here's what you need to do. Here's how to adjust your strategy. So that'll be another option open to people. So again, I don't even have it up on the website yet, but if anybody's interested in that, and I'll probably do a beta version for a lower price, to kind of get it going, and just ask people for feedback to kind of help me make it as good as I possibly can. So if anybody's interested in that, they can email me and just say, you're interested in that, and I can put you on a list.
Sign me up as interested, because that sounds absolutely amazing. And again, I'll put all of your contact details in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. Valerie, you're not someone I just sort of found off the street to talk about Pinterest. You're actually the wonderful person who set up my Pinterest account. And so I can vouch for how easy you made that whole process. Social media and keeping up with all of them can be really overwhelming, can't it? So it's one thing I definitely recommend people outsource or get some assistance with, so that they don't have to, like you say, stay on top of all of the algorithms and what's happening on the different platforms and so forth, because
so overwhelming.
No one's got time for that and actually doing the money making part of their business, right?
Exactly.
So Valerie, I just want to thank you so much for sharing all of these useful tips. Like it's just motivated me to get back on Pinterest and do more on it. And I'm sure everyone will agree that that has been super helpful. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was so fun to be here with you and spend this time with you. And I hope the information was helpful. And I hope people, if they're not currently using Pinterest, I hope this will inspire people to use it, because it really is a great way to grow your business.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for joining us and giving us all those useful tips and tricks. And I will put all your contact details in the show notes. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Valerie to get more advice and sign up to one of her programs, which I really recommend, I have done that too, then please do have a look in the show notes and get in touch with her. Thank you, Valerie. Next week, I'm going to be talking to you about what crystals and essential oils you can use to help you in your business.
Giving up your day job could be the best thing you ever do. Make sure you join us next time on the Beauty of Our Dreams podcast. Thanks for listening.